Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I know this upload might be a little unexpected. I actually planned to upload a single 2-hour video yesterday, but ultimately decided to split it into 2 parts. Also, we're just 33 subscribers away from 20,000. So by the time you're watching this, we might already be there. So I just want to thank you for your patience, your kindness, your support, your love, and for always being so overwhelmingly positive. And that's it for my Oscar speech. Now let's get into the video. Enjoy. Jessica and Daniel Groves were a married couple living in a trailer home in Ottawa, Ohio. They had been together for many years and had a teenage son, Daniel Jr. In 2018, Jessica became pregnant. Both Jessica and Daniel were struggling with drug addiction. On January 10, 2019, Jessica went into labor and was taken to the hospital. Staff believed she was under the influence of drugs, and she refused testing and questions. Their baby boy, Dylan, was born premature. Tests showed drugs in both Jessica's and Dylan's systems. Dylan soon showed signs of withdrawal and needed medical care. Because of the drug exposure, Child Services became involved. A plan was first made to release Dylan to Daniel if Jessica stayed away from the home. However, further testing revealed multiple drugs in Dylan's system, including methamphetamine and fentanyl. Officials decided to place him in foster care instead. A foster parent named Andrea Bowling took Dylan home from the hospital. She prepared quickly and focused on helping him through withdrawal. Dylan shook, twitched, and wanted to be held constantly. Andrea cared for him closely and reported concerns after seeing Jessica appear to be under the influence during a visit. Despite concerns, Child Services returned Dylan to Daniel's care on January 28, 2019. Doctors later reported that Dylan seemed healthy during checkups. However, required home visits did not happen regularly. On March 28th, a social worker saw Dylan in Jessica's arms and reported no visible injuries. This was the last confirmed sighting of Dylan alive. After that date, Daniel missed appointments and avoided contact with authorities. Weeks passed without anyone seeing Dylan. Officials eventually discovered Daniel had not been working where he claimed. Police became involved, and the couple's older son was placed in foster care. On June 10, 2019, police surrounded the Groves home. Jessica claimed Dylan had been taken by Child Services. Daniel later told investigators that he found Dylan dead in his crib and assumed natural causes. He admitted disposing of the body. After initially leading police to the wrong place, Daniel finally directed them to an old hidden well in a grassy area. Inside, authorities recovered Dylan's body. He had been wrapped in plastic and weighed down with rocks. An autopsy revealed multiple injuries, including skull fractures, broken ribs, a broken arm, and a broken leg. Some injuries were healing, while others were recent, showing repeated harm. Evidence also showed drugs were in Dylan's system after birth, meaning he was exposed again later. Jessica admitted she caused Dylan's injuries, but claimed they were accidental and said she did not mean to harm him. Evidence and testimony showed Dylan suffered repeated trauma before his death. Jessica Groves was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus additional years. Daniel Groves was acquitted of aggravated murder, but convicted on other charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after decades. Dylan was only about 11 weeks old when he died. His case shocked the community and showed the tragic consequences of addiction, neglect, and abuse. Clifford Robert Olson Jr. was born on January 1, 1940 in Vancouver. He grew up in nearby Richmond with his parents and 3 younger siblings. His father delivered milk, and his mother worked at a fish cannery to support the family. From a young age, Clifford showed troubling behavior. He bullied other children, got into fights, and often misbehaved to get attention. He was known for lying and manipulating people. By age 10, he was stealing from neighbors, taking milk money from porches, and reselling stolen fruit. He also hurt stray animals. At school, he was a loner and frequently in trouble. He skipped classes and eventually dropped out after the 8th grade. After leaving school, he found work at a racetrack, but soon became involved in more serious crimes such as robbery, break-ins, and forgery. At 17, he was arrested for breaking and entering and sent to a youth correctional center. Over the next 2 decades, he spent most of his adult life in prison and escaped custody several times. He was known to be charming and manipulative, using his words to gain favors from guards and inmates. He often informed on other prisoners to benefit himself, which made him many enemies and led to violent attacks against him. While in prison in the late 1970s, he befriended another inmate who had murdered a child. Olson convinced the man to write detailed accounts of his crimes and then gave them to police to help secure a conviction. He claimed he was helping authorities, but he became fascinated with the violent details and later used them as a guide for his own crimes. Soon after, he met a woman named Joan and moved in with her. Months later, he began a series of murders that shocked communities across British Columbia. His first known victim was 12-year-old Christine Weller, who disappeared in November 1980 after spending time at a mall. Her body was later found. She had been strangled and stabbed. In April 1981, 13-year-old Colleen Dawnell disappeared after accepting a ride from a man who promised her a job. She was drugged, assaulted, and murdered. Just days later, 16-year-old Darren Johnsrud vanished while running an errand. His body was later found after he had been beaten to death. In May 1981, Olson assaulted a young girl he was babysitting but avoided charges. 4 days after his wedding to Joan, he killed 16-year-old Sandra Wolfsteiner, who had accepted a ride from a stranger. In June 1981, 13-year-old Ida Court disappeared on her way to meet her boyfriend. Her remains were later found near Weaver Lake. By this time, several children and teens had vanished, but police had not yet linked the cases. That changed in July 1981 when 9-year-old Simon Partington disappeared. Because of his age, police believed foul play was involved and launched a major investigation. Olson continued killing. On July 9th, he murdered Judy Kozma after luring her with drinks and drugs. Later that month, he killed Raymond King Jr., a teen looking for work, and Sigrun Arndt, a student visiting from Germany. He also murdered 15-year-old Terry Carson and 17-year-old Louise Chartrand. Police finally arrested Olson in August 1981 after finding Judy Kozma's address book in his car. After days of questioning, he confessed to one murder but refused to reveal the rest unless he was paid. He demanded $10,000 for each body he helped locate. Authorities agreed in what became known as the cash for bodies deal. This decision outraged the public when it became known later. Olson eventually confessed to 11 murders. In 1982, he pleaded guilty and received 11 life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. He repeatedly tried to gain parole but was denied each time. He died of cancer in prison on October 2, 2011, at age 71. His crimes led to changes in Canadian law, including stricter parole rules and stronger victims' rights protections. Jan Pietrzak and his wife Quiana Pietrzak seemed like a happy young couple with a bright future. Their love story began in 2005 when they met at a party for Marines who were preparing to deploy to Iraq. Friends and family said they were deeply in love and planned to build a life and family together. Kiana Faye Jenkins was born on February 16, 1982, and grew up in Southern California. She studied at San Diego State University, where she earned a master's degree in public health. She worked as a health education assistant and hoped to become a doctor. Jan Pietrzak was born in Poland on March 13, 1984. When he was 11 years old, his family moved to the United States and settled in Brooklyn, New York. After the September 11 attacks, he felt a strong duty to serve his new country and joined the U.S. Marines in 2003. He later served in Iraq as a helicopter mechanic and rose to the rank of sergeant. The couple married on August 8, 2008. Kiana chose the date so Jan would never forget their anniversary. Sadly, they were only able to enjoy 2 months of married life before tragedy struck. On October 15, 2008, co-workers became worried when both Jan and Kiana did not show up for work and could not be reached. Police went to their home for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found the front door open and immediately sensed something was wrong. Inside, the house smelled of gasoline and gas. Items were scattered on the floor, and the home had been ransacked. In the living room, officers discovered the bodies of Jan and Quiana. Both had been tied up and gagged. Jan had been badly beaten. Quiana had been sexually assaulted. The couple had been tortured before being shot to death. Police also found racist slurs spray-painted on the walls. There were signs that the killers had tried to start fires to destroy evidence, but the fires did not spread. Investigators found shoe prints in the house and learned that Quiana's ATM card had been used shortly after the murders. Surveillance footage showed a suspect wearing a blue bandana and gloves. Because the ATM was used near Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, investigators suspected military involvement. Suspicion soon focused on Lance Corporal Tyrone Miller, who worked under Jan and had expressed dislike toward him. When questioned, Miller gave inconsistent answers and admitted he had been in the area. He also mentioned wearing blue bandanas and owning shoes matching the prints. Police searched his home and found overwhelming evidence, including the couple's stolen items, Quiana's ATM card, weapons, blue bandanas, and Jan's military uniform. Miller eventually admitted involvement and named 3 accomplices: Emery John, Kevin Cox, and Keyshawn Sykes, all Marines. Investigators learned the 4 men planned to rob the couple. Believing they had money and valuables, they forced their way into the home, tied the couple up, and tortured them to get the ATM pin. Quiana was assaulted while Jan was forced to watch. Afterward, the attackers shot both victims, vandalized the home to mislead police, and attempted to burn it. The motive was robbery and revenge. Miller believed Jan had hurt his chances for promotion, though there was no proof. All 4 men were arrested and convicted. Miller, John, and Sykes were sentenced to death, while Cox received life in prison without parole. Jan and Quiana were buried together with full military honors. Their families said they wanted the couple to remain together forever, just as they had planned in life. Their story remains one of heartbreaking loss and senseless violence. Joseph McEnroe and Michelle Anderson. On Christmas Eve in 2007, a shocking and tragic crime took place in the small town of Carnation. The victims were members of the Anderson family, who were well known and respected in their quiet community. Wayne and Judy Anderson had lived in Carnation for many years. Wayne worked as an engineer, and Judy worked for the Postal Service. They raised 3 children, Scott, Mary, and their youngest daughter, Michelle Anderson. Friends described Judy as warm and kind, and the family appeared normal and stable. Michelle grew up in the area and graduated from high school in 1997. Some classmates remembered her as artistic and quiet. She sometimes claimed her parents treated her badly, but later investigations found no proof of abuse. She had a close relationship with her older brother Scott, and often said he was the only person she truly trusted. Around 2002, Michelle met Joseph McEnroe through an online dating site. The two quickly became inseparable. Joseph was seen by others as strange and anxious. He spoke about spiritual guides and suffered from severe anxiety, but could not afford treatment. The couple lived together in a mobile home and kept mostly to themselves. Neighbors said they seemed paranoid and believed people were out to harm them. They covered their windows and rarely socialized. Michelle often complained about money and said her parents had wealth while she and Joseph struggled. Their relationship was volatile, with frequent loud arguments. In 2006, financial problems forced the couple to move onto Michelle's parents' property, where they lived in a trailer. On December 24, 2007, Wayne and Judy invited their family for Christmas Eve dinner. Scott planned to attend with his wife Erica and their 2 young children, Olivia, 5, and Nathan, 3. Michelle and Joseph arrived first. Before arriving, the couple had armed themselves with handguns. Michelle had made a vow. If her family did not show her respect by Christmas Eve, she would kill them. Inside the home, Michelle tried to shoot her father but missed when her gun jammed. Joseph then shot Wayne in the head, killing him. Judy ran in screaming, and Joseph shot her. When she continued screaming, he shot her again, killing her. The couple cleaned the scene and waited for Scott and his family to arrive. When Scott entered the home, he saw Michelle with a gun and rushed toward her. They struggled, but Joseph intervened. Michelle shot Scott and killed him. She then shot Erica, who was badly wounded but tried to call 911. The operator heard screaming before the call ended. Joseph ripped the batteries from the phone. He allowed Erica briefly hold her children before shooting her in the head. Joseph then murdered the 2 young children. He later said he did not want any witnesses. Police received the incomplete 911 call and came to the property but did not enter after finding the gate locked. 2 days later, Judy's co-worker went to check on her and discovered the bodies inside the home. During the investigation, Michelle and Joseph returned to the scene and told a strange story about traveling to Las Vegas. Their behavior raised suspicion. When questioned, Michelle eventually confessed, saying, "It's my fault." Both later admitted they planned the murders. Michelle said she was angry because Scott owed her money and because her parents wanted her to pay rent. The couple had planned to flee to Canada, but instead returned and pretended to discover the crime. In 2015, Joseph McEnroe was found guilty of 6 counts of aggravated murder and sentenced to 6 life terms without parole. Michelle Anderson was later convicted of the same charges and received the same sentence. Emile and Viktoria Cilliers. On an overcast Easter morning in Wiltshire, England, Viktoria Cilliers prepared for what should have been a normal skydive. She was an experienced skydiving instructor who had completed thousands of jumps without any problems. She had given birth to her baby son only 5 weeks earlier and did not feel ready to return to skydiving. The jump had been a gift from her husband, Emile Cilliers, and she believed he would be disappointed if she did not go through with it. The weather caused several delays, which made Viktoria even more nervous. When the plane finally took off, it flew lower than usual because of the cloudy conditions. This meant the jump would be a simple hop and pop from about 5,000 feet instead of a higher altitude. When Viktoria jumped, she pulled the cord to release her main parachute. It failed. The lines were tangled. She quickly released the main parachute and deployed her reserve parachute, but the reserve parachute also failed to open properly. This is an extremely rare event. With both parachutes failing, Viktoria fell toward the ground at high speed, spinning out of control. She tried to fix the problem as she dropped thousands of feet, but she could not slow her fall. She hit the ground at over 60 miles per hour. Miraculously, she survived. Other jumpers rushed to help her. Viktoria was conscious and strangely felt little pain at first. She had suffered severe injuries, multiple broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, spinal fractures, a broken collarbone, and lung damage. Doctors later said several factors helped save her life: the lower jump height, her light body weight, and the soft, freshly plowed field where she landed. The chief instructor at the skydiving center immediately became suspicious. It is extremely unlikely for both a main and reserve parachute to fail. When he inspected the equipment, he discovered the main parachute lines were tangled. More troubling was the reserve parachute. 2 important connecting links were missing. There was no sign of mechanical failure. The British Parachute Association also examined the equipment. In millions of jumps over many years, reserve parachutes almost never fail. Investigators concluded the parachute had likely been tampered with. Attention quickly turned to Viktoria's husband, Emile. Police learned their marriage had problems. Emile was in debt and having multiple affairs. He admitted he was unhappy in the marriage and had planned to leave. He also revealed that the day before the jump, he had taken Viktoria's parachute into a bathroom at the skydiving center for several minutes. Investigators also discovered a strange gas leak at their home a week earlier that could have been deadly. Prosecutors believed Emile tried to kill Viktoria to collect life insurance money and escape his debts. In 2017, he stood trial for attempted murder. The first trial ended in a mistrial. In 2018, after a retrial, he was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years. Viktoria struggled to accept that her husband had tried to kill her. For a long time, she doubted the verdict and continued visiting him in prison. Eventually, She recognized the manipulation and control in their relationship. She filed for divorce and later wrote a book about her survival and recovery. Today, Viktoria has rebuilt her life and continues to heal from both her physical injuries and emotional trauma. Her survival remains one of the most astonishing cases in skydiving history, and the investigation revealed a shocking betrayal behind what first appeared to be a tragic accident. The Maguad family home was once a safe and loving place. The family lived a quiet life. The father was a school teacher, and the mother worked as a school head. They were not rich, but they had enough and cared deeply for their children. They had 2 children. Their daughter Gwen was 18 years old and dreamed of becoming a nurse. Their son Luis was 16 and wanted to be a lawyer. Both were kind, smart, and did well in school. In 2021, Gwen met a girl named Janice Sibyl. Janice said she was an orphan with no family. She said she worked long hours for another family and had no chance to go to school. Gwen and Luis felt sorry for her and wanted to help. Gwen begged her parents to take Janice into their home. At first they were unsure because their house was small, but Luis even offered to give up his room so Janice could stay. In the end, the parents agreed. They welcomed Janice into their family and later adopted her. They treated her like their own child and gave her love, care, and support. For a few months, everything seemed fine. Then, one afternoon in December 2021, the father received a call while he was at work. The caller told him there was an emergency and that he needed to go home right away. He rushed back as fast as he could. When he arrived, he saw a bloody blanket and a knife outside the front door. Inside, he saw a terrible scene. Gwen was lying on the floor. She had been beaten, stabbed many times, and killed. Nearby was Luis. He had also been beaten and stabbed and was already dead. The father feared the worst for Janice. He called out her name again and again. A few moments later, Janice came out of a room. She was not hurt. Her hair was wet. At first, the father thought it was blood, but Janice said she had taken a bath. Janice told him that robbers broke into the house. She said they killed Gwen and Luis while she hid under a bed. Police arrived soon after and questioned her. At first, they believed her story, but many things did not make sense. The room where Janice said she hid was messy and torn apart. It seemed impossible that someone hiding there would not be found. Nothing valuable was missing from the house, except the phones of Gwen and Luis. This was strange for a robbery. Police also noticed that Gwen had been killed earlier than Luis. There were signs that Gwen had tried to escape and then came back, likely to help her brother. There was also strange online activity. While the attack was happening, Janice posted messages online asking for help. She even changed her name on social media during this time. Police found this very unusual. As the investigation continued, police discovered that Janice was not truly an orphan. Her parents were alive, and she had been talking to her mother online. They also found proof that Janice planned the attack with a teenage boy she knew. She admitted that she helped kill Gwen and Luis. She said she felt jealous and wanted attention. Police found her fingerprints on the weapon used in the murders. Both Janice and the boy were arrested and later found guilty. The case shocked the community and left the family forever broken. What began as an act of kindness ended in a tragedy no family should ever face. In February 2006, a 41-year-old wife and mother named Tamera Dawnell Burns suddenly went missing. She lived in Pierre, South Dakota, with her husband Brad and their 12-year-old daughter, Haley. Tami was very close to her family and spoke to her parents every morning without fail. One cold February morning, that call never came. Tami's mother tried calling her again and again, but there was no answer. Tami also did not show up for work. Worried, the family contacted one of Tami's co-workers, who then called the police to report her missing. Police went to Tami's home to check on her. Right away, they saw troubling signs. In the garage was Tami's SUV. There was blood on it, and the inside smelled strongly of bleach, as if someone had tried to clean it in a hurry. This made police believe that something very bad had happened. Brad told police that he last saw Tami the night before. He said she came home late, got out of her car, then got into another car and left. He claimed he tried to follow her, but the car broke down. Police later confirmed that he had been stopped by a highway officer that night, which placed him in Tami's vehicle after she disappeared. As police searched the area, they found Tami's body in a quiet wooded spot about 10 miles from town. It was a place where Brad had once taken Haley to practice driving. Tami had been badly attacked and stabbed many times. There were marks on her hands showing that she had tried to defend herself. Brad was arrested and questioned. He denied killing Tami. He admitted that their marriage was struggling and that Tami had told him she wanted a divorce. Police also learned that Tami had been having a secret affair with a coworker named Brian. Brian admitted to the affair but said he had been with his family the night Tami was killed. While Brad was in jail, police watched his phone calls and letters. Soon, strange letters arrived at the police station. The letters blamed Brian for Tami's murder and gave details only the killer would know. At first, this seemed serious, but police soon discovered the truth. Brad had written the letters himself with help from his twin brother. He was trying to frame Brian. Police found strong proof of this, including a map Brad sent to his brother. That map led police to hidden trash bags. Inside were bloody items, gloves, and a box of condoms with one missing. All of it tied back to Brad. When the case went to trial, Brad made a shocking claim. He said he did not kill Tami. Instead, he said their daughter Haley did it while sleepwalking. He claimed he covered up the crime to protect her. Haley took the stand and told a very different story. She described strange behavior from her father that night and said he told her not to tell anyone what was happening. Experts testified that there was no way a child could have caused the injuries Tami had. Brad also changed his story many times while testifying, which hurt his case badly. After only 3 hours of discussion, the jury found Brad guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Haley went to live with her grandparents and cut all ties with her father. Later, she became an advocate for victims of abuse, honoring her mother by helping others. Brad remained in prison until his death in 2024. Sara Tokars was a mother of 2 young boys living in Marietta, Georgia. One night after spending Thanksgiving with her family in Florida, she returned home late with her sons. It was around 10 p.m. when she pulled into her garage. Before she could get out of the car, a man with a shotgun came up to her. The man forced Sara and her 6-year-old son into the front seat. Her younger son was asleep in the back seat. The man got into the driver's seat and drove away. Sara begged him not to hurt her or her children. The boys stayed quiet, frozen with fear. After driving a short distance to a dark, quiet area, the man stopped. He did not ask for money or the car. Instead, he aimed the gun at Sara's head and shot her. The car rolled into a field and stopped after hitting a tree stump. The crash woke the younger child and caused the older one to hit his head. The man ran away, leaving the boys alone with their mother. The older boy turned off the car because he remembered his parents saying a car should not be left running. Believing his mother was badly hurt, he helped his brother out of the car. The boys walked to the nearest house and told the people there that their mother had been shot. Police were called right away. Officers found the car in the field with Sara dead inside. At first, police thought it might be a car robbery, but her purse and jewelry were still there. Nothing had been taken. This made police believe the killing was planned. Sara's home was checked next. There were no signs of a break-in. Doors were unlocked in strange ways, and the alarm was not on. Police learned that Sara had been very scared in the weeks before her death. Sara had been married to Fred Tokars, a powerful lawyer. He had worked as a prosecutor and later as a defense lawyer. To the public, the family looked happy and successful. But behind closed doors, things were very different. Before she died, Sara had told her sister and cousin that she was afraid. She gave them a folder and told them to give it to police if anything happened to her. Inside were papers showing secret money deals connected to Fred. One name stood out in the papers: Eddie Lawrence. He had a criminal past and had done business with Fred. Money had been moving between them for years. Fred had never told police about him. Police soon learned that Fred was not just defending criminals, he was helping them hide money and make illegal deals. Sara had discovered this and was planning to leave him. She was also gathering proof in case she needed it to protect herself and her children. Police then received a tip about Curtis Rower. His sister told police that he had blood on his clothes and had admitted to shooting a woman. Curtis was arrested and later confessed. He said Eddie Lawrence hired him to kill Sara. Months later, Eddie admitted the truth. He said Fred Tokars had asked him to arrange the murder because Sara knew too much. Fred offered part of Sara's life insurance money as payment. Eddie said Fred even spoke coldly about the children, saying they would get over it. Fred was arrested and put on trial. The evidence showed careful planning, secret money, and hired killers. A jury found Fred Tokars guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of release. Curtis Rower also received life in prison. Eddie Lawrence received life in prison as well after helping police. Sara's children were taken in by family members. They grew up away from the public eye, carrying deep pain from what they had seen. Sara had tried to protect them, and in the end, the evidence she left behind exposed the truth and brought justice. Before 1988, the Dubberly family lived a quiet and happy life in Alturas, Florida. They went to church, stayed out of trouble, and were well known in their small town. Peggy Dubberly was a hard-working mother who raised her children with care. She later married a man named Pi Carr, and their families moved in together. In June of that year, Peggy's 16-year-old son, Duane, found a strange letter in their mailbox. The letter warned the family to leave Florida or they would all die. The family laughed it off and did not report it. They never imagined the message was real. 4 months later, in October, Peggy suddenly became very sick while at work. She felt strong pain, nausea, and burning in her body. Doctors could not figure out what was wrong and sent her home. Over the next week, her condition got much worse. Her hair began to fall out, she could not walk, and she was in terrible pain. Soon, Duane and another child in the home began having the same symptoms. Doctors noticed that Peggy was losing large amounts of hair, which made them suspect poison. A special test was done, and the results were shocking. Peggy had been poisoned with thallium, a deadly chemical once used in rat poison. The amount in her body was far beyond what a person could survive. Tests showed that everyone in the house had thallium in their system, including the children. Peggy fell into a coma and never woke up. After months of suffering, she died at just 41 years old. What had first seemed like an illness was now clearly murder. Police searched the family's home for answers. After testing hundreds of items, they found the source of the poison: sealed bottles of soda that had been secretly opened, filled with thallium, and carefully closed again. This proved the poisoning was planned and targeted. Investigators first looked at family members, but ruled them out after finding thallium in their bodies as well. Attention then turned to neighbors. One neighbor stood out. He was angry toward the family, spoke harshly about them, and oddly repeated the same words that were written in the threat letter. Police also learned he had strong knowledge of chemistry. Because there was no direct proof, police decided to send an undercover agent to get close to him. The agent pretended to be a woman going through a divorce and slowly gained his trust over several months. She noticed strange behavior and writings that hinted at poison and harm. She had to be extremely careful, knowing her life could be in danger. Eventually, the neighbor moved out of his home and allowed the undercover agent to move in. This gave police legal access to search the house. In the garage, they found chemical containers. One of them tested positive for the exact type of thallium used in the poisoning. With this final piece of evidence, police arrested the man. At trial, they showed detailed proof that he had planned the crime, poisoned the drinks, and wanted the family gone. The jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to death. The rest of the poisoned family members survived, but the loss of Peggy changed their lives forever. Duane grew up without his mother, but he carried her memory with him. Even after great pain and loss, he went on to build a life and a family of his own, proving that tragedy does not have to end hope. Lauren McCluskey was a 21-year-old college student who lived and studied at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. She was kind, hardworking, and very loved by her family and friends. Lauren was also a talented athlete and ran track for the university. She was in her final year of college and excited about graduating soon. On September 1st, 2018, Lauren went out for the night with her best friend. They went to a bar near campus. At the door, they met a tall and friendly bouncer who said his name was Sean Fields. He talked with Lauren several times that night. Before she left, he asked her out and she gave him her phone number. The next day, Lauren went on a date with him. He seemed kind and caring. He said he was a student and made her feel safe. He bought her flowers and soon asked her to be his girlfriend. Lauren was happy and hopeful. But after a short time, things began to change. Sean became very controlling. He wanted to know where Lauren was at all times. Lauren started to feel stressed and tired. Her friends noticed she was no longer acting like herself. About a month after they met, Sean told Lauren he wanted to give her a gun for protection. This scared her friends. They reported their concerns to campus housing staff, who then sent an email to campus security. The email warned that Lauren might be in danger. Lauren found an ID card that belonged to Sean. The photo looked like him, but the name and birthday were different. She searched online and learned his real name was Melvin Rowland. She also found that he had a long criminal history and was a registered sex offender who was on parole. That night, Lauren confronted him in her dorm room and told him she knew the truth. He became angry, but after hours of arguing, he left. Lauren believed the relationship was over. Soon after, Lauren began getting threatening text messages from many unknown numbers. The messages became worse each day. Some claimed to be from Melvin's friends. One message even said that Melvin had died and that Lauren must go to his funeral. Lauren believed the messages were really from him. Lauren called campus police many times and went to the police station in person. She showed them the messages and explained his past crimes. Police told her it was likely a scam and did not act right away. Days passed, but the messages continued. On October 19th, security cameras caught Melvin walking around campus wearing a Deadpool costume from the movie Deadpool 2. He was carrying a small black bag that held a loaded gun. Lauren did not know he was nearby. On October 22, Lauren finished class and walked back to her dorm while talking to her mother on the phone. Suddenly, her parents heard shouting, and then the phone went silent. Lauren had been attacked and taken. Police later discovered her belongings on campus, and a search was immediately launched. That night, Melvin was found hiding in a church where he died by suicide. Shortly afterward, police located Lauren's body in a car. She had been shot. Her parents later learned that many warnings had been missed. Randi Trimble was born on December 15, 1974 in Norfolk, Virginia. She was an only child and very close to her mother. Her father left when she was young, so her mother raised her alone and worked very hard to give Randi a good life. Even though money was tight, Randi was loved and supported. Randi was a bright and happy child. She enjoyed dance, music, and school activities. She did very well in school and cared deeply about learning. After high school, she went to college and studied speech therapy. She wanted to help children, and that is exactly what she did after graduating. She later got a full-time job working with children at a medical center, which was her dream job. While in college, Randi met Brian Trimble. They dated for several years, and he supported her through school. In 2000, they got married and settled into life together in Pennsylvania. To friends and family, they seemed happy and well-liked. Randi worked very hard and often held more than one job so they could save money and plan for the future. Not long after they married, Brian was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Randi became very caring and protective of him. She worried about his health and safety. Over time, Brian began to see her care as control, and their marriage started to change. He grew resentful of her, even though she was supporting him. Brian worked as an IT technician, where he met Blaine Norris. Blaine wanted to make a low-budget horror movie and became obsessed with the project. Brian joined him and hoped to work as a cameraman. At first, the movie had money behind it, but that funding fell apart. Brian then asked Randi to invest their savings into the film. Randi refused. She was worried about money and also worried about Brian's health, since filming would require long hikes. Brian agreed to quit the project, but he became angry and bitter toward Randi. Blaine was also struggling. He had used credit cards to fund the movie, his marriage was failing, and he was deep in debt. Brian talked about wanting out of his marriage, but not wanting a divorce. Eventually, the two men made a plan. On January 10, 2003, Randi went to work as usual and then to her second job. That evening, Brian went out to dinner with a friend. When he returned home after 8 p.m., he called 911 and said he found Randi dead in the garage. Police arrived and immediately felt something was wrong. Randi had been stabbed many times, and the scene looked staged to appear like a robbery. Brian's behavior was strange. He did not touch Randi or check on her, and his emotions did not seem real. Still, he had an alibi. He was confirmed to be at a restaurant when Randi was killed. The case stalled until police learned more. They found that Brian had searched online for instructions on how to kill someone and had shared those instructions with Blaine before Randi's death. He admitted that he paid Blaine to kill Randi because he wanted out of the marriage and wanted access to money. Police then focused on Blaine. Evidence showed he bought gloves, clothing, and a knife matching the type used in the murder. Camera footage proved he had time to commit the crime. Blaine eventually accepted a deal to avoid the death penalty. In 2004, both Brian Trimble and Blaine Norris were sentenced to life in prison without parole for Randi Trimble's murder. Randi's life was taken by someone she trusted. She was kind, hardworking, and dedicated to helping others. Marisela Botello was a 23-year-old woman from Seattle. She was friendly, social, and liked to travel. In October 2020, she went to Dallas to visit her ex-boyfriend. They were no longer together, but were still on good terms. After spending the weekend with him, Marisela decided to go out alone on the night of October 4th, 2020. She went to the Deep Ellum area, which is known for bars and nightlife. Just after midnight on October 5th, a rideshare dropped her off on Elm Street. Security video showed Marisela leaving a bar around 1:15 a.m. This was the last time she was ever seen alive. After that moment, her phone stopped showing activity, and her bank card was never used again. Police later learned that Marisela met a man named Charles Beltran that night. The two talked at the bar and left together. It is believed that they spent time together in his car. Charles lived nearby and was known to spend time in Deep Ellum. Charles lived in a house with Lisa Dykes, a much older woman who supported him and paid for many things in his life, including the car. Another woman, Nina Morano, was also connected to them and was at the house that night. Phone records later showed something important. Around 4 a.m., Marisela's phone, along with the phones of Charles, Lisa, and Nina, all showed the same location. That location was the house where Charles and Lisa lived. This made police believe Marisela had been taken there. Police searched the house and found signs that something bad had happened. The carpet had been cleaned, but stains under it were tested and matched Marisela's blood. Her DNA was also found in Charles's car. The day after Marisela disappeared, her ex-boyfriend became worried when she did not return to get her things or go to the airport. He contacted her family. Police looked into him but ruled him out early in the case. 3 weeks later, police named Charles as a person of interest. By that time, he had already run away. Lisa and Nina also quit their jobs and disappeared. Charles's car was later found in New York, and hair in the trunk matched Marisela. Months passed with no sign of Marisela. Then, on March 24, 2021, human remains were found in a wooded area in Wilmer, Texas. The remains were confirmed to be Marisela's. Police arrested Nina the next day. Lisa and Charles were found soon after in different states. All three were charged with murder or helping in the murder. Lisa and Nina were later released on bail, but they cut off their tracking devices and ran again. They were caught once more in February 2022. This time, the judge set very high bail and they stayed in jail. Charles also remained locked up. All three suspects are still in jail. She was described as loving, bright, and full of life. Her death has deeply affected her loved ones and the community. In 2014, a woman named Viktoria Nasyrova became friends with her neighbor, Alla Alexenko, in Russia. Viktoria was charming and friendly. She slowly gained Alla's trust. Alla lived alone, and her daughter Nadia Alexenko lived in New York. Viktoria often visited Alla, listened to her stories, and learned about her life. Over time, Alla shared very personal details with her. In October 2014, Alla suddenly stopped answering her phone. Nadia became worried because her mother always answered her calls. She checked her mother's phone records and saw that the last person she spoke to was Viktoria. When Nadia called Viktoria, she said Alla had gone on a trip. Soon after, Nadia received a strange text message from her mother's phone telling her not to worry. But Nadia felt something was wrong. Nadia flew to Russia and found her mother's apartment empty. Jewelry, money, and valuable items were gone. Alla had saved about $40,000 hidden under the floor, and that money was also missing. Nadia went to the police, but there were no clear answers at first. She searched through traffic camera footage from the night her mother disappeared. After many hours, she found an image of a car. In the driver's seat was Viktoria. In the passenger seat was a woman who looked unconscious. Nadia believed it was her mother. Months later, a burned body was found in a remote area. Dental records confirmed it was Alla. Police issued an arrest warrant for Viktoria, but she had already left Russia. Viktoria had traveled to the United States and was living in New York. There, she continued to target victims. In June 2016, a man named Ruben Bukov met Viktoria through a dating app. She came to his apartment and cooked him dinner. After eating the food, he felt dizzy and passed out. He was unconscious for almost a week. Viktoria stole his money and used his credit card to spend thousands of dollars. She even showed up at his workplace and made excuses about why he was sick. Then she disappeared. Around the same time, a woman named Olga Tsvik, a beautician in Queens, also became a victim. Viktoria had been trying to befriend her. The two women looked very similar. One day, Viktoria brought Olga cheesecake as a gift. After eating it, Olga became very sick and lost consciousness. She was found in her apartment, close to death. Her room was staged to look like a suicide. Pills were scattered around, and her clothes had been changed. Her passport, money, and other valuables were missing. At first, tests did not show any drugs, but later further testing found a strong sedative in the cheesecake. Viktoria's DNA was also found on the container. Police believe she tried to kill Olga and steal her identity. A private investigator helped track Viktoria down in Brooklyn. She was arrested in March 2017 by the NYPD. When police searched her home, they found Olga's passport in her possession. Viktoria was charged with attempted murder, robbery, and other crimes in New York. In 2023, after a trial, she was found guilty. She was sentenced to 21 years in prison. She is now serving her sentence at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. Even now, she says she is innocent. When her sentence in the United States ends, she may be sent back to Russia to face trial for Alla's murder. Shana Grice was 19 years old and lived in Sussex, England. She was a kind and friendly young woman. She worked as a receptionist at a company in Brighton. While working there, she met a man named Michael Lane. He was 26 years old and worked as a mechanic at the same company. At first, Shana and Michael started talking and later began a relationship. At that time, Shana also had a boyfriend named Ashley Cook. The relationship with Michael was kept secret. Michael was kind to her. He gave her gifts and attention, but soon his behavior changed. He became controlling and angry. Shana decided to end the relationship in late 2015. Michael did not accept the breakup. He kept contacting her. He sent her flowers and messages. Shana felt uncomfortable and reported the flowers to her boss. Soon after, her car tires were slashed. Michael suddenly appeared and offered to fix them. Shana believed he had damaged her car. Michael's behavior became worse. He told Ashley about the secret relationship and damaged his car. He began waiting outside Shana's house and work. He followed her and would not leave her alone. In February 2016, Shana went to the police. She said she thought she was being stalked. However, she did not tell them everything about the relationship because she felt embarrassed. The police warned Michael, but did not take strong action. In March 2016, Michael attacked Shana on the street. He pulled her hair and took her phone, but a person driving by helped her. The police were called again. But when officers saw text messages between Shana and Michael, they thought it was just an argument between two people in a relationship. Shockingly, Shana was fined £90 for wasting police time. This made her feel hopeless. Even after this, Michael continued to harass her. He sent many messages and made phone calls. She left her job to stay away from him, but Michael would not stop. On August 23, 2016, Shana met Michael and told him clearly that she wanted him to leave her alone. The next morning, August 25, 2016, Michael went to her house early. He knew her roommates would be gone and she would be alone. He broke into the house, took a knife from the kitchen, and went into her bedroom. A neighbor later said they heard a woman scream. Michael murdered Shana in her bedroom. After killing her, he took her bank cards and left. He used her card to take money from an ATM. Later he returned to the house, poured fuel around her body, and set a fire to try to hide what he had done. When Shana did not arrive at work, people became worried. A family member went to check on her and saw blood at the house. Emergency services arrived, but it was too late. Shana was dead. Police later found strong evidence against Michael. He was arrested and charged with murder. In 2017, Michael Lane was found guilty in court. The judge said the murder was planned. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 25 years before he can ask for release. After the case, there was serious criticism of how the police handled Shana's complaints. Many people believed that if her reports had been taken more seriously, her life might have been saved. Kenia Monge. Kenia Monge was 19 years old. She was born in Honduras and moved to the United States when she was 12 to live with her mother. Her mother had married a man named Tony, and Kenia saw him as her dad. The family lived in Aurora, Colorado, near Denver. Kenia was kind, friendly, and easy to talk to. She made friends quickly and was close to her family. After high school, Kenia started studying broadcasting in college. She was confident and loved speaking in front of people. Around this time, she moved in with her boyfriend, Luis. She was mostly responsible, but she also liked going out with friends. Even though she was not old enough to drink, she used a fake ID to go to clubs. On March 31, 2011, Kenia went out with some newer friends to a club called the 24K Lounge in Denver. They had drinks and danced. Kenia was very small, and the alcohol affected her quickly. Around midnight, she told her friends she was going to the bathroom. She left her purse, phone, and keys at the table and asked them to watch her things. She never came back. Security guards saw her stumbling and forced her to leave the club because she was too drunk. She was left outside alone, without her phone or purse. Inside, her friends looked for her but could not find her. They thought she had left with someone she knew and decided to return her things the next day. The next morning, Luis woke up and saw that Kenia had not come home. This was not normal for her. She always stayed in touch. He called her sister, Kim, but she had not heard from Kenia either. Soon, the whole family was worried. They called everyone they could think of. Later, Kenia's friends brought her purse, phone, and keys to her parents. They said the last time they saw her was when she went to the bathroom. Tony checked her phone for clues. There was nothing unusual except one new text message. It said, "Hey, this is Travis, the guy who gave you a ride last night. Creepy white van." Tony called the number many times. Later, a man named Travis Forbes called back. He said he saw Kenia outside the club talking to a homeless man. He said she was drunk and asked for help. He drove her to look for her car, but she could not find it. He then offered to take her home. He claimed they stopped at a gas station, and Kenia walked off with another man. He said that was the last time he saw her. Tony did not believe him. Police were slow to act at first. They said Kenia had not been missing long enough. After 72 hours, they finally filed a report. Tony met Travis at a gas station with a police officer nearby. Travis seemed calm and clean-cut, but Tony smelled strong bleach coming from Travis's van. Inside, the back of the van looked very clean, while the front was messy. Still, police did not arrest him at that time. Soon, video from a bakery where Travis worked showed him moving a large cooler into a freezer. He was wearing gloves and carrying bleach. Later, he turned off the cameras. Neighbors said they saw him burning a barrel behind the bakery. Police questioned him, but he kept telling the same story. There was not enough proof to charge him. Weeks later, another woman named Lydia was attacked in her apartment. She was badly hurt, but survived. She fought back and scratched her attacker. DNA from under her fingernails matched Travis. He was arrested. Months after Kenia went missing, Travis finally confessed. He admitted he picked Kenia up and tried to assault her while she was passed out in his van. She woke up and fought back. He strangled her. He put her body in a cooler and later buried her near a highway. He burned items to destroy evidence. Travis pleaded guilty to Kenia's murder and to attacking Lydia. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kenia is remembered as a loving daughter, sister, and friend whose life was taken far too soon. Bradley Lewis was born in March 2000. He grew up in a loving family. As a child, he loved football and enjoyed spending time with his friends. After school, he trained to become a floor layer. People described him as kind, friendly, and easy to get along with. Bradley met Abigail White when he was a teenager. She was slightly older than him. They began dating when they were still young. Over time, they had 4 children together, 3 of whom were Bradley's. Abigail had a very difficult childhood. When she was young, there was violence in her home. Her parents separated, and she later went into foster care before living with her grandparents. She struggled at school and was often excluded because of her behavior. As a teenager, she was given medication for depression. As an adult, Abigail did not have a regular job. Instead, she made money online by sharing adult content. At first, she earned a good income, but later her earnings dropped. Bradley's income helped support the family. Their relationship was troubled for a long time. Friends and family said it was toxic and unhealthy. There were frequent arguments. Abigail was very jealous and controlling. She often accused Bradley of cheating. At the same time, she admitted she had been with other men. Social services became concerned about the situation at home, and at one point said they should not live together. Bradley even moved out for a time, but he continued to see her. Abigail sometimes used drugs and drank heavily. She often lost control when angry. In voice messages to a friend, she said she had no limits when she was angry and believed she was capable of killing Bradley. She also sent him many threatening text messages, saying she would stab him. On March 19, 2021, after an argument, Abigail stabbed Bradley in the arm. He needed medical treatment. However, he told doctors it was an accident because he did not want her to get into trouble. Despite this, he did not end the relationship. He felt trapped because of their children. On March 25, 2021, things became worse. Bradley told Abigail he wanted to end the relationship. She was very upset. That evening, they went to a pub with friends. Abigail had taken cocaine and was drinking alcohol. She became aggressive and argued with people. Witnesses said Bradley looked scared and upset. He told a friend he needed to get away from her. A friend drove them home. They argued during the drive. When they arrived, Abigail went inside first. Bradley told his friends something worrying before going in. Around 8:10 p.m., neighbors heard Abigail screaming for help. She said Bradley was not breathing. Inside the house, Bradley was lying on the floor with a stab wound to his chest. There was blood in the hallway and kitchen. A knife was found nearby. A medical exam showed that he died from a single stab wound to the chest that went into his heart. At first, Abigail claimed Bradley had stabbed himself and that it was an accident during a struggle. Police did not believe this story. They found many threatening messages she had sent before his death. They also discovered that she had searched online about stabbing just days earlier. Abigail was arrested and charged with murder. During the trial, doctors said she had serious problems controlling her emotions and anger. The jury found her guilty of murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 18 years before she can apply for release. Bradley's family said his death broke their hearts. He was remembered as a loving father and a kind young man. Mark Van Dongen, UK. Early in the morning on September 23, 2015, a woman named Nick White was woken by loud screaming and her doorbell ringing. When she looked outside, she saw a man standing in the street. He was wearing only his underwear and looked like he was covered in mud. At first, she thought it might be a prank, but the man was crying, screaming, and begging for help. Other neighbors came outside after hearing the noise. As the neighbors got closer, they realized the man was not covered in mud. His skin was badly burned and coming off his body. The man was Mark Van Dongen, who was 28 years old. Mark was originally from the Netherlands. He had moved to the UK to study and worked as an engineer. He had been in a long relationship with a woman named Berlina Wallace, who was much older than him. Friends later said the relationship was troubled. Mark had scratches on his body, and on one occasion, boiling water had been poured on him while he slept. Mark eventually left the relationship and started seeing someone new. In early September 2015, Berlina began searching online for information about acid attacks. She read many cases and then bought strong acid online. Around the same time, Mark contacted the police and said Berlina was harassing him and his new girlfriend. He also told his father that he was scared of her and worried she might hurt him. On the night of September 22nd, Mark went to Berlina's flat to make it clear that the relationship was over. He decided to stay the night. At around 3 a.m. while Mark was sleeping, Berlina went into the kitchen, poured acid into a cup, and returned to the bedroom. She woke Mark, said that if she could not have him, nobody could, and then threw the acid directly into his face. Mark ran out of the flat in terrible pain, screaming for help. Neighbors called emergency services and helped him into a flat where he was placed under a cold shower. When paramedics arrived, they found Mark with very serious burns to his face and body. He was taken to the hospital right away. On the way, he kept saying that he could not see. One of his eyes had been badly damaged. Mark told police that Berlina was responsible. Police went to her flat and arrested her. Mark's new girlfriend was checked and was unharmed. At the hospital, Mark saw his injuries and said he did not want to live anymore. He was placed into a coma for several months. One of his legs had to be removed, and his face was badly damaged. His injuries were so severe that even his father could not recognize him at first. When Mark woke up, he could barely move and later became fully paralyzed. He suffered great pain and sadness. In late 2016, he was moved to a care home, but the care was poor. His family later brought him back to mainland Europe for better treatment. Mark later developed a serious lung infection. A medical procedure meant he would no longer be able to speak. This loss was too much for him. Since euthanasia was legal in Belgium, Mark applied and was approved. He died on January 2, 2017, at the age of 29. In court, Berlina was found guilty of throwing a corrosive substance with intent and was sentenced to at least 12 years in prison. In 1988, a woman named Irene May was living a hard life. She struggled with drug use and stayed in a trailer with another woman named Carrie Dalton. Carrie also used drugs. The two women did not get along, and their problems kept getting worse. Carrie believed that Irene was stealing her jewelry and selling it to buy drugs. One day, Carrie went through Irene's purse and said she found some of the missing jewelry inside. This made Carrie very angry. She told Irene that she would have to work more around the trailer to make up for what she had done. From that point on, the anger between them grew. Carrie and one of her friends, Cheryl, later believed that Irene had a serious illness. They became scared and angry because they had shared needles with her. This caused even more fear and rage toward Irene. Around this time, Carrie heard that Irene was telling people she was afraid Carrie might kill her. Carrie then decided she would protect herself and started carrying a knife. On June 26, 1988, Carrie and Irene got into a big fight inside a trailer owned by a woman named Joanne. During the fight, Irene was tied to a chair. Carrie's boyfriend Mark was there, along with Cheryl. They all agreed that Irene should be killed. While Irene was tied up, Carrie filled a syringe with battery acid and injected it into Irene's leg. The group then used a heavy pan to beat her, breaking many bones. They also shocked her using wires. After that, Mark stabbed Irene several times with a tool and then with a knife. These wounds finally killed her. After Irene died, Carrie and Cheryl cleaned the blood from the trailer. Mark and another man called George took Irene's body and placed it in a truck. They drove to a Native American reservation. There, Irene's body was cut into pieces, and each piece was buried in a different spot. Irene's body has never been found. Later that day, Joanne came home and saw Carrie and Cheryl cleaning the kitchen. She noticed blood, a bloody pillowcase, and a bloody tool. When she asked what happened, Carrie said she had fought with Irene and that Irene left. Joanne felt something was very wrong. When Mark came back, he was dirty and had blood on him. After everyone left, Joanne called the police. When police arrived, they did not believe Joanne. The trailer looked clean, and they said Joanne seemed high and scared. The police left without taking action. Irene had 3 children. She had lost custody because of her drug use, but she was trying hard to get them back. When Child Services could not reach her, they reported her missing. Police searched for years, but did not find her body. In 1992, police questioned Carrie, Mark, and Cheryl. Cheryl told police everything. Mark confirmed parts of her story. Carrie said she was innocent and denied everything. In 1995, Carrie was sentenced to death. Mark was sent to prison for 25 years, and Cheryl was sentenced to 15 years. This case happened in Sydney, Australia, on July 20th, 2019. It involved a 25-year-old woman named Jessica Camilleri and her mother, Rita Camilleri. From a young age, Jessica had many problems growing up. She was slow to walk and talk, and she struggled at school. She found reading, writing, and maths very hard. She was often bullied by other students and had trouble making friends. As a teenager, Jessica was suspended and later expelled from school for attacking other students. At home, she often argued with her family and became aggressive. At one point, she went to live with her grandmother, but this did not help, and she soon returned to live with her parents. Over time, the stress caused her parents to separate, and her father left the home. Rita stayed with Jessica and continued to care for her. She tried to protect her daughter and support her, even when things became very hard. Over the years, Jessica became more violent. She attacked strangers in public by pulling their hair. She also began making many phone calls to random people, threatening to hurt or kill them. These calls scared many people, and police became involved more than once. By 2019, Jessica and Rita were living alone together. Jessica's behavior had not improved. On July 19, 2019, Rita learned that Jessica had again made threatening phone calls. Rita took Jessica to a police station, where an officer warned her to stop this behavior. After that, they went home. The next day, 20th of July, 2019, a young family member, only 4 years old, came to stay with them. Rita gave the child extra care and attention, which made Jessica angry and jealous. That evening, Rita ordered takeaway food for everyone. Later that night, Jessica said she had a bad stomach pain and needed a doctor. When the doctor arrived, Jessica was on the phone ordering more food and would not hang up. After waiting for some time, the doctor left, believing Jessica had made up the illness. After the doctor left, Rita became very worried. She called her older daughter and said she thought Jessica needed to be taken to a hospital for help. Rita then tried to call emergency services. Jessica became angry, grabbed the phone, and followed her mother into another room. Jessica attacked Rita, knocked her to the ground, dragged her into the kitchen, and grabbed a knife. The 4-year-old child saw what was happening and tried to help, but Jessica pushed him away and injured his face. The child ran and hid. Jessica continued attacking her mother until she died. Afterward, Jessica went to a neighbor's house and asked them to call the police. She then returned home and called emergency services herself. Police arrived and found Jessica covered in blood. Inside the house, they found Rita dead and the young child badly shaken and injured. The child was taken to hospital and later needed surgery. Jessica told police she had acted in self-defense, but evidence showed this was not true. She was arrested and later charged. In court, the jury decided she was guilty of manslaughter, not murder. She was sentenced to more than 21 years in prison. Rita was remembered by her family as a loving mother who never gave up on her daughter. The case remains one of the most shocking crimes in Sydney in recent years. Linda Spence was a young woman from Glasgow. She was close to her parents and spoke to her mother, Patricia Spence, every day. When Linda suddenly stopped calling, her family knew something was very wrong. Linda had worked in banking and later tried to run her own business. At first she failed and went bankrupt. Later she tried again and started a property business. She appeared successful and lived a rich lifestyle. She spent money on nice clothes, cars, and nights out. To many people it looked like she was doing very well. In truth, Linda was getting money by lying to people. She convinced families and investors to give her large sums of money for property deals that did not exist. When people asked questions, she used charm and lies to delay them. Over time, more people began to realize they had been tricked. One of those people was Colin Coates. He had once been very successful, but later became violent and involved in crime. Linda took a large amount of his money and promised big returns. When he realized the deal was fake, he became angry. Linda tried to calm him and told more lies to buy time, but the money was already gone. Linda also took money from others, including John Glenn, who sent her threatening messages when he realized he had been cheated. By this point, Linda was scared. She had taken money from dangerous people and could not pay them back. In April 2011, Linda visited her parents. Her mother noticed she seemed tense and worried. Linda said she was going out briefly and would return soon, but she never came back. The next day, she went to a house owned by Colin Coates. She went there willingly, likely believing she could talk her way out of trouble again. Instead, Coates and Philip Wade took control of her. They moved her to another flat owned by David Parker, where Paul Smith also lived. Linda was held there and could not leave. Coates and Wade returned every day to hurt and threaten her while demanding money that no longer existed. Parker and Smith were afraid of Coates and did not report what was happening. They later said they feared for their own lives. Linda was allowed to call her parents once. She sounded calm, but she did not say where she was. This was the last time her family heard her voice. Later, Linda told Coates that some of his money had gone to John Glenn. Coates used this to threaten Glenn and get some money back. Even then, he did not let Linda go. By the end of April 2011, Linda was killed. Her body was removed and has never been found. The people involved cleaned the flat to remove all signs of what had happened. Linda was reported missing in May. Her mother later made a public appeal, begging for information. At first, people were too scared to speak. Eventually, John Glenn went to the police after being threatened again. This led police to Parker and Smith, who told them everything. Linda Spence was held captive in an attic for nearly 2 weeks, tied to a chair, blindfolded, and unable to move or use the toilet. During this time, she was repeatedly tortured. She was burned with a hot iron and cigarettes, had fingers and toes crushed and cut, and her kneecaps smashed as her captors demanded money she no longer had. After she was killed, her body was removed, and the house was thoroughly cleaned to destroy evidence of what had happened. In court, Parker and Smith received long prison sentences. Philip Wade was sentenced to 30 years. Colin Coates was given life in prison with a minimum of 33 years. Linda's body has never been recovered. Her parents asked many times for the truth so they could lay her to rest, but no one has ever said where her remains are. Her family described her as kind, caring, and loving, and said they will always miss her. The case of Brian Waters took place in the United Kingdom in June 2003. It is known as one of the most shocking crime cases in British history. At the center of the case was a man living under a false name. He called himself Andrew Lamb and lived a rich life in Malta. In truth, his real name was Christopher Jr. Before the crime, Christopher had worked in secret investigation and media research. He was smart, skilled, and trusted in his work. However, he later became involved with dangerous criminals. One of these criminals was John Wilson, a violent gang leader. Wilson pulled Christopher into serious crime. Another man connected to Wilson was Brian Waters, a middle-aged man who was growing illegal plants at a farm in Cheshire. Brian worked for Wilson and owed him a large amount of money. Brian ran the farm with help from his adult children, Gavin and Natalie, and a worker named Solomon Razak. After Brian was robbed near Christmas, he fell deeper into debt. Wilson became angry and suspected Brian of hiding money and running the farm without permission. Wilson ordered Christopher to watch Brian and his family. Christopher followed Brian's son to the farm and discovered the illegal operation. He reported this back to Wilson. Soon after, Wilson sent a group of men to the farm to steal everything and punish Brian. The group included Christopher, James Raven, Otis Matthews, and David Moran. David stayed outside to watch for police, while the others went inside. When Solomon Razak arrived at the farm, he was attacked and badly hurt as the men demanded money he did not have. Later, Brian arrived and was also attacked. He was tied up at his cannabis farm near Knutsford and tortured for around 3 hours while his children were forced to watch. He was hung upside down, beaten with metal objects, shot with a staple gun, repeatedly dunked in water, and finally had a plastic bag set on fire over his head, which melted onto his face. He died from the injuries. The gang then went to Brian's home and took his wife Julie, believing she might know where the money was. While this was happening, David Moran called the police and reported an attack at the farm. Police arrived quickly. Some of the attackers escaped, but James Raven was caught. Officers found Brian dead, but Julie, Gavin, Natalie, and Solomon were still alive. All were badly hurt and deeply traumatized. The crime scene contained strong evidence, including DNA and phone records. This led police to arrest Wilson, Otis Matthews, and David Moran. David agreed to help the police and later entered witness protection. Christopher fled the country and hid for many years. He lived openly in Malta under his false name, believing he was safe. In 2019, he was placed on Europe's Most Wanted and was arrested weeks later. He was sent back to the UK to stand trial at Chester Crown Court. In 2021, Christopher was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. John Wilson, James Raven, and Otis Matthews also received life sentences. It later came out that Christopher and Raven had once worked as undercover media researchers for the BBC. The case left lasting pain for Brian Waters' family. His wife and children continued to live with the loss and trauma of that night. Lacey Fletcher was born on November 25, 1985. She grew up in Slaughter, Louisiana, a small town north of Baton Rouge. She lived with her parents, Clay Fletcher and Sheila Fletcher. As a child, Lacey went to school and later was homeschooled. Over time, she began to struggle with mental health problems. She was diagnosed with autism and social anxiety. As she got older, these problems became worse. At some point, Lacey stopped leaving the living room of her home. She stayed on a couch and refused to move from it. Her parents said they believed she was afraid to leave the couch. They brought her food and drinks and placed items near her so she could use the bathroom without standing up. Over the years, Lacey stayed in the same spot. She did not receive regular medical care. The last time she saw a doctor was many years before her death. On January 3, 2022, at around 2 a.m., Sheila Fletcher called 911 and said her daughter was not breathing. Emergency workers arrived at the house and found Lacey dead on the living room couch. Police quickly saw that something was very wrong and treated the home as a possible crime scene. Lacey's body was very small and weak. She weighed only about 96 pounds. She was found sitting in a deep dip in the couch, which showed she had been there for a very long time. Police said it appeared that her body had become stuck to the couch. She was surrounded by human waste, and the floor near the couch was damaged from years of urine and feces. Lacey had severe open sores on her body. Some were so deep that they reached the bone. Her hair was tangled and dirty, and insects were found in it. Her body was covered in waste, and her skin showed signs of illness and infection. Police also found foam from the couch inside her stomach, which suggested she may have eaten the couch because she was very hungry. Near the couch were small items like lotion, powder, and spray. There were also children's movies nearby. A toilet and piles of clothes were close to where she sat. The house had a very strong and overwhelming smell, according to police and medical workers. Doctors later said Lacey did not die suddenly. They believed she had been dead for at least 1 or 2 days before 911 was called. The official cause of death was severe medical neglect. She suffered from malnutrition, infections, lack of movement, and untreated sores. These problems led to a serious body infection that caused her death. Authorities believed Lacey had been living on the couch for around 12 years. On January 18, 2022, police interviewed Clay and Sheila Fletcher. They said Lacey chose to stay on the couch and made her own decisions. They claimed she never complained about pain and did not want to leave the living room or go to a hospital. In May 2022, Clay and Sheila Fletcher were charged with second-degree murder. They were arrested and later released on bail. In 2023, the charges were briefly dropped due to a legal issue, but the couple was charged again and arrested once more. The case continued through the court system. Lacey Fletcher's death shocked many people and raised serious questions about care, neglect, and responsibility. Darren Rainey was a 48-year-old man living in Florida. He was homeless and had lived a hard life. Darren was very poor and had struggled for many years with serious mental illness. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition that can cause fear, confusion, and seeing or hearing things that are not real. Because of this, Darren had trouble keeping a job and often moved from place to place just to survive. In 2010, Darren was arrested for a non-violent drug offense. He did not hurt anyone. He was sent to Dade Correctional Institution in Florida and was given a 2-year sentence. Darren was only a few months away from being released. Inside the prison, Darren noticed that some guards treated inmates very harshly. Even small rule breaks could lead to violence. Guards often used force, pepper spray, or batons. Darren was quiet and tried to stay out of trouble, but he was still often targeted. Being mentally ill did not protect him. He spent much of his time reading the Quran in his cell. A few months before his release, guards took his Quran away. After this, Darren became very upset and anxious. Even though he was taking medication, his mental health got worse. One day, Darren had a breakdown. In his cell, he covered the walls with his own waste. Guards rushed in, yelling, and dragged him out of the cell. They said they were taking him to clean himself in the shower. As they walked, they passed several open showers. Instead of using those, they took Darren to one specific shower. Other inmates nearby knew this shower was dangerous. It was hidden from camera view, and guards could control the water temperature from outside. The guards locked Darren inside the shower and told him he would not be let out until he was clean. Darren turned on the water. Very quickly, the water became extremely hot. He tried to turn it down, but the controls inside did nothing. The water kept getting hotter. The shower space was very small, and Darren could not escape the water. He screamed for help and begged the guards to stop. Other inmates heard him crying and saying he was sorry. The guards did nothing. Darren was left in the shower for over 2 hours. Eventually, his screams stopped. When guards finally opened the door, Darren was lying on the floor. He was dead. The water had been so hot that parts of his skin had come off. The next day, another inmate was told to clean the shower and reported finding pieces of skin in the drain. Police investigators came to the prison and spoke only to the guards involved. Darren's body was examined by the medical examiner, who said there were no burns and ruled the death an accident. Darren's family was told he died of natural causes, possibly a heart problem. Years later, Darren's family and a journalist continued to search for answers. Other inmates came forward and confirmed hearing Darren scream for hours. They also said the shower had been used before to punish inmates. Tests later showed the water in that shower could reach up to 180 degrees, far hotter than a normal shower. Photos of Darren's body were released years later and showed severe injuries. Still, no guards were charged. In 2017, the state said again that Darren's death was an accident. However, the state paid Darren's family $4.5 million. To this day, Darren Rainey's death is officially listed as undetermined. In 2014, a woman named Sara Sands moved with her 5 children to Silvertown. Sara was 31 years old and was raising her children on her own. She moved because she wanted to live in a place where people knew each other and helped one another. She hoped for a strong community where she and her children would feel safe and supported. Soon after moving in, Sara began meeting people who lived nearby. She made an effort to talk to her neighbors and be friendly. That is how she met a man named Michael Plested, who was 77 years old and lived alone next door. Michael seemed kind and helpful. Many people in the area knew him by face. He spent a lot of time outside talking to neighbors and children, and he volunteered to help with local work. Sara and Michael became close. Sara checked on him often, helped him with meals, and kept him company. She trusted him. Michael also showed interest in helping young people find small jobs. One of Sara's sons later began helping him at a local newspaper shop, with Sara's permission. After some time, people in the neighborhood began to talk. Rumors spread that Michael had harmed children in the past. Sara was shocked and did not want to believe it. She kept her children close and stayed alert, but before she could fully understand what was happening, Michael was arrested. After his arrest, Sara learned the truth. Michael was not his real name. His real name was Robin George Roy Molt. He had been convicted many times in the past for abusing boys. These crimes went back decades, starting in the 1970s. Because of when the crimes happened, his name was not on public lists, and many people had no idea who he really was. Sara later learned that 3 of her sons had been abused by him. The boys were very scared and ashamed, and they were afraid to speak openly at first. Sara reported what had happened and moved her children away to keep them safe. Even after his arrest, Michael was released on bail and sent back to his home, very close to where Sara had lived. This made her extremely afraid for her children. On November 28, 2014, Sara went to Michael's apartment. She was upset, emotional, and had been drinking. She later said she only wanted him to admit what he had done and to plead guilty, so the children would not have to speak in court. When Michael told her the boys were lying, Sara lost control. She stabbed him several times, and he died. Right after it happened, Sara called the police and turned herself in. She did not run away or hide what she had done. She told police she did not plan to kill him and that she believed she was protecting children from further harm. Sara went to trial in 2015. The jury found her not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter, meaning she acted while overwhelmed by emotion. She was sentenced to prison. Later, her sentence was increased on appeal. In 2018, Sara was released and returned to her children. Today, Sara and her sons have spoken out to raise awareness and to help protect other children. Emma Walker was a teenage girl who lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. She went to Central High School, where football and cheerleading were a big part of school life. In 2014, when Emma was only 14 years old, she became the only freshman to make the cheerleading team. She loved cheerleading and worked very hard at it. Emma was known as kind, caring, and full of life. She had big dreams and hoped to one day become a nurse who cared for sick babies. While cheering at a football game, Emma met William Riley Gall, who went by Riley. He was 2 years older and played football for the school. At first, Riley seemed polite and friendly, and Emma's parents thought he was a nice boy. Soon, Emma and Riley started dating and became a popular couple at school. Over time, things began to change. Riley became very jealous and controlling. He did not like Emma spending time with friends or talking to other people. Emma's friends noticed this and became worried, but Emma often said everything was fine. Riley would send many messages, call Emma again and again, and wait outside places for her. When they broke up, he would beg for forgiveness and promise to change. Emma's parents were very concerned. They tried many times to get Emma to end the relationship. They even took her phone away, but Riley found ways to keep in contact with her. For about 2 years, the relationship continued on and off, with many arguments and breakups. In late 2016, Emma finally decided she was done with Riley. Her parents noticed she seemed happier and more like herself again. Emma told her friends that the relationship was over for good. On the night of November 18, 2016, Emma went to a friend's house. While there, she received strange and scary messages from an unknown number. The messages told her to come outside, or someone she loved would get hurt. Emma believed this might be a prank. Soon after, Emma and her friend saw Riley lying in a ditch nearby. He claimed he had been kidnapped. Emma told him they were broken up and asked him to leave her alone. The next morning, Emma noticed a man dressed in black near her house. She became scared and contacted Riley, asking for help. When her mother came home, she found Riley and Emma talking outside and told Riley to leave. On the night of November 20th, 2016, everything seemed normal. Emma went to bed just after midnight. Riley called her many times, but Emma did not answer. In the early morning hours, Emma's father heard noises but did not see anything unusual. Around 6 a.m., Emma's mother went to wake her for school. Emma did not respond and was not breathing. Police soon discovered that Emma had been shot while she slept. The bullet came through the wall from outside her bedroom. Evidence showed the shooter knew exactly where Emma's bed was. Riley quickly became the main suspect. His phone records showed he had been near Emma's house that night, even though he said he was elsewhere. His friends told police that Riley had taken a gun from his grandfather and asked how to get rid of fingerprints. Riley later asked them to help throw the gun into a river. Police set up a plan with Riley's friends. When Riley brought the gun to throw it away, police arrested him. Riley was charged and later found guilty of first-degree murder and stalking. He was sentenced to life in prison. Emma's family continues to honor her memory. Scholarships and memorials were created in her name, and she is remembered for her kindness and bright spirit. In 2008, the American TV show Wife Swap featured a family called the Stockdales. The show was about two families with very different lifestyles. The mothers would switch homes for 2 weeks. In the first week, the new mother followed the rules of the house she joined. In the second week, she could change the rules. After that, the families would meet and talk about what happened. The Stockdale family lived in a small rural area in Ohio. The parents were Tim and Kathy Stockdale. They had 4 sons, Calvin, Charles, Jacob, and James. The family lived on a farm and had very strong religious beliefs. Tim worked outside the home, and Kathy stayed home to teach the boys. The children were homeschooled. Kathy said she wanted to protect her sons from outside influences and teach them strong values. The family had many strict rules. The boys were not allowed to watch TV, play video games, or listen to music unless their parents approved it. They were not allowed to date. They had to wake up early and eat meals at the same time each day. If they were late, they had to pay a small fine. The boys earned tokens by doing chores. They could trade these tokens for small rewards, like listening to a radio show that their parents approved. The family did not spend much time with other people. Kathy believed that too much free time and socializing could lead to bad behavior. She wanted her sons to always have a clear purpose in what they were doing. They played together in a bluegrass and gospel band called the Stockdale Family Band. Tim and the boys performed at local events and competitions. Kathy managed the band. They made several albums and became well known in their area. On Wife Swap, Kathy switched places with a mother named Lori from a very different family. Lori tried to give the Stockdale boys more freedom. She allowed them to watch TV and relax more. One of the sons, Jacob, became very upset when the rules were changed. He cried and said he was afraid of disappointing his parents. This moment stood out to many viewers. After the show ended, life seemed normal for the Stockdales. The older sons moved out for school and work. The younger sons continued to play in the band with their father. The family stayed active in music and farm life. Then, in June 2017, everything changed. One afternoon, police received a 911 call from the Stockdale home, but no one spoke on the line. When officers arrived, they heard a gunshot. Inside the house, they found a terrible scene. Kathy and her youngest son, James, had been shot and killed. Jacob, who was 25 years old at the time, had also shot himself in the head but was still alive. Police said that Jacob had used a shotgun from the home. His father, Tim, and his two older brothers were not at home when this happened. Jacob survived, but had very serious injuries. He lost sight in one eye and had lasting brain damage. After more than a year in the hospital, he was charged with 2 counts of murder. At first, he said he was not guilty because of insanity. Doctors examined him many times. There were delays in the case, and he spent time in a mental health hospital. In 2021, Jacob changed his plea to guilty. At the sentencing, his family shared a message saying they loved him and forgave him. They asked the judge to be kind. The judge sentenced Jacob to 30 years to life in prison. To this day, no one fully knows why this happened. Some people believe the strict life at home may have caused stress. Others say we may never understand the full story. Sally Ann Bowman was an 18-year-old girl living in Croydon, London. She had recently moved into her own flat but remained very close to her family, especially her 3 sisters. Sally was talented, working as a model and a hairdresser, and had dreams of one day appearing on the cover of Vogue. She was known for her laughter, singing, and bright personality, and those who knew her believed she had a very promising future ahead. On the evening of September 24, 2005, Sally received a call from her sister inviting her to a friend's birthday celebration. She went out with her sister Nicole and a group of friends to a local bar called Lights. They spent the night drinking and having fun, leaving the bar around 1 a.m. Sally and Nicole took a taxi back to Nicole's house, where they planned to sleep. During the ride, Sally was on the phone with her ex-boyfriend, Lewis Rustin. They had recently broken up, but emotions were still raw. Sally eventually asked Lewis to pick her up from Croydon Town Center, because her sister had been in trouble and couldn't help her. Lewis arrived around 2:20 a.m., and he drove Sally back to her home. The two argued inside the car for over an hour before Sally finally got out around 4 a.m. and Lewis drove away. Less than 3 hours later, around 6:30 a.m., a neighbor spotted what looked like mannequin legs behind a skip. When she approached, she realized it was Sally's body. She had been stabbed multiple times, leaving exit wounds, and her body showed signs of sexual assault. The discovery shocked the neighborhood and immediately drew a homicide investigation. Police initially questioned Lewis because he was the last person known to see Sally alive. He was taken in for 4 days and gave DNA samples, which later cleared him as a suspect. The DNA found on Sally's body did not belong to Lewis, but matched evidence from an unsolved sexual assault 4 years earlier, showing that her attacker was a serial offender. Investigators learned that the attacker had also targeted another woman on the same night, a few minutes before attacking Sally. This woman survived and was able to give a description and help create a composite sketch of the suspect. Despite having his DNA and a sketch, the police could not immediately identify the man. They conducted mass DNA screenings in the area, testing thousands of men to try to find him, but the search went on for months. The breakthrough came in June 2006, when a 35-year-old man named Mark Dixie was arrested for an unrelated fight. His DNA, taken during the arrest, matched the DNA from Sally's murder. Dixie had a long criminal history, including robbery, assault, and indecent exposure, but none of his DNA had previously been on file. Once identified, he fled to Amsterdam for 3 months before returning to the UK, acting as if nothing had happened. Police tracked him to his workplace and safely arrested him there. At trial in 2008, Mark Dixie's defense claimed he had not killed Sally, saying he found her already dead, but the evidence contradicted this. His DNA matched the crime scene, and witnesses placed him at the scene that night. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years, unlikely ever to be released. Sally's murder shocked her family and the community. She was a talented young woman with her whole life ahead of her. Madison Maddie Middleton was born on October 5, 2006, in Santa Cruz, California. She lived with her parents, Laura Jordan and Mike Middleton, in the Tannery Arts Center apartment complex. Maddie was a happy and cheerful child. She loved swimming, dancing, drawing, and talking about wolves. Her sense of humor made everyone smile, and she could make friends with anyone she met. On Sunday, July 26, 2015, Maddie was playing at home while her mother spent time with a friend. She decided to ride her new white scooter around the apartment courtyard. Wearing a purple dress and a black helmet, she spent the afternoon riding, sometimes chatting with other kids but also enjoying time alone. At around 5:07 p.m., Maddie was last seen near the mailboxes outside the parking garage. This moment was captured on video, and after that she disappeared. As the evening came, Maddie's mother, Laura, went door to door asking neighbors if they had seen her. She could not find her daughter anywhere and grew very worried. Knowing Maddie was smart and confident, Laura did not think she would wander off alone. At 6:08 p.m., Laura called 911 to report Maddie missing. Friends, family, and neighbors searched everywhere, even checking homeless camps, parks, and beaches. The next day, July 27, 2015, after hours of searching, Maddie's body was found at 7:55 p.m. in a recycling bin in the parking garage of her apartment complex. A 15-year-old boy, Adrian Jerry Gonzalez, who lived nearby, was arrested. Investigators later revealed that he lured Maddie to his apartment with ice cream, assaulted her, and left her body in the bin. Astonishingly, Adrian even helped search for Maddie that day, asking neighbors and police about the progress. Adrian's background showed he had a troubled childhood. He grew up with his mother, Reggie, and faced hardships including family problems and financial struggles. Neighbors described him as a normal teenager who liked yo-yos and worked as a counselor at the tannery, so many could not believe he was capable of such a crime. Adrian was first charged in juvenile court, but was later transferred to adult court because of the seriousness of the crime. Judge John Salazar described his actions as cruel, callous, and planned. However, in 2019, a new California law prevented children 15 or younger from being tried as adults. After appeals and court rulings, Adrian's case returned to juvenile court. In April 2021, he pleaded guilty to all charges. Adrian expressed some remorse and said he wanted to work on himself to prevent hurting anyone again. He was sent to a state juvenile facility where he could possibly be released after 3.5 years, but must stay until age 25 at the latest. He will also have to register as an offender for life and pay restitution. Maddie's death left a permanent mark on her family and the community. Her parents and grandparents continue to live with the heartbreak. Liberty Libby Squire was a 21-year-old university student living in Hull, East Yorkshire, England. She was in her second year at the University of Hull and was known by friends as kind, funny, and welcoming. She loved spending time with friends and was close to her family. Although she had struggled with mental health and an eating disorder in the past, she was doing well at university and seemed happy and confident. On the evening of January 31, 2019, Libby left her student home to meet friends. They gathered at another student house before planning to go to a nightclub called the Welly. Around 10 p.m., Libby texted her boyfriend goodnight and left her phone at home. At about 11:20 p.m., the group arrived at the club, but security refused Libby entry because she was very intoxicated and unsteady. Her friends stayed with her briefly, then put her in a taxi about 10 minutes later and paid the driver to take her home. They watched the taxi leave and continued their night out. The taxi driver later told police he dropped Libby near her house on Wellesley Avenue and saw her walking toward the front door. However, she never went inside. Shortly before 3 a.m., her friends returned home and discovered she was not there. Her phone was inside the house, and her keys were found in the garden. It was freezing cold, with snow on the ground, and they became worried. They called police immediately. CCTV cameras helped trace Libby's movements after she left the taxi. She was seen walking nearby streets at around 11:37 p.m. Minutes later, 2 people tried to help her when they saw her lying in the snow, crying and distressed. She refused help and continued walking. A group of students later invited her inside to warm up, but she kept walking. Police and volunteers searched the area, including the nearby River Hull, fearing she may have fallen into the water. A key breakthrough came when a resident reported hearing a woman scream near a wooded area around midnight. CCTV footage later revealed a silver car driving around the area repeatedly. The driver stopped near Libby, spoke to her, and after several minutes, she got into the car around 12:08 a.m. The vehicle then drove to nearby playing fields. Around this time, a resident heard screaming. The car left the area about 10 minutes later. Police later identified the driver as 24-year-old Pavel Relowich, a local butcher who lived nearby. He was arrested on suspicion of abduction and sexual offenses. Investigators discovered he had committed multiple disturbing crimes over previous years, including voyeurism, burglary, and exposing himself to women. Relowich first denied seeing Libby, then claimed he picked her up to help her and dropped her off. Evidence later showed his DNA was found on and inside Libby's body. 7 weeks after she disappeared, Libby's body was found in the Humber estuary. A post-mortem confirmed she had been assaulted and killed, though the exact cause of death could not be determined. In October 2019, Relowich was formally charged with assault and murder. During his trial in 2021, prosecutors argued he targeted Libby because she was alone, vulnerable, and intoxicated. The jury found him guilty of both assault and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 27 years. In 1961, a very small farming village called Yerba Buena in rural Mexico was home to only about 50 poor farmers. The village was extremely isolated. There were no roads, electricity, or running water. The only way to reach it was by a rough dirt path through the jungle. One day, two teenage twins named Magdalena and Eleazar Solis arrived in the village. They were about 16 years old and came from the city of Monterrey. They had been traveling between small villages, pretending to be spiritual leaders in order to receive food and shelter. When they reached Yerba Buena, they decided to stay and run a longer scam. The twins claimed they followed the ancient true religion of Mexico. They told villagers that Magdalena was a reincarnated priestess and that Eleazar was a holy figure reborn. At first, they simply asked for food and a place to stay. Slowly, they began telling stories about old gods and secret spiritual knowledge. When villagers asked for proof of their powers, the twins created rituals. They made a special drink they claimed would give visions from the gods. In reality, it contained marijuana. After drinking it, villagers felt strange and became easier to control. The twins used these moments to strengthen belief in their lies. Over time, the rituals became more dramatic. The twins added animal blood to the drink and wore costumes with feathers and body paint to resemble ancient priests. Some villagers began to believe deeply, while others remained unsure. Two brothers from the village, Santos and Cayetano Hernandez, became loyal followers. They helped enforce the twins' authority and pressured others to obey. The brothers enjoyed their new power and forced villagers to give food and supplies. A small temple was built in a cave in the nearby mountains where rituals were held at night. By 1962, the rituals had become darker. During one ceremony, Cayetano asked for a volunteer to be sacrificed to the old gods, promising eternal happiness. Under the influence of drugs and belief, one villager stepped forward willingly. The victim was killed and their blood was used in future rituals. After this, sacrifices continued. About once a month, a villager would volunteer and be killed in the cave. Fear, drugs, and pressure kept others silent. Over roughly a year, around 15 people died. On May 31, 1963, another sacrifice was about to take place. A woman named Selena volunteered. Her childhood sweetheart, Hector, tried to stop her, but the crowd attacked her and she was killed. Hector, horrified, left the village and reported everything to the police. The next day, Hector returned home as instructed by authorities, but cult members discovered he had spoken to police and murdered him. Police soon arrived to raid the village. When officers confronted Cayetano, he attacked and killed one policeman with a machete. A gunfight followed. Several cult members were killed and many others were arrested. Magdalena and Eleazar were captured hiding in the cave. Inside the cave, police discovered the remains of the victims. The temple was destroyed, and the bodies were buried. In the end, 12 cult members were convicted of murder. Authorities also found the cult had begun spreading to nearby villages. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of manipulation, belief, and isolation leading to tragedy. Thirteen-year-old Arushi Talwar lived with her parents, Rajesh and Nupur Talwar, in an apartment in Noida, India. Her parents were dentists, and the family also had a servant who lived with them, named Hemraj. Arushi was a good student and was close to her parents. Nothing seemed unusual about their life. On the night of May 15, 2008, the family followed their normal routine. Arushi stayed in her room while her parents worked and later returned home. That evening, they had dinner together. Arushi received an early birthday gift, a camera, and spent some time taking pictures. Around 11 p.m., her mother went into Arushi's room to switch on the internet router. Arushi was awake and reading. After that, her parents went to bed. According to them, this was the last time they saw her alive. Sometime between midnight and early morning, Arushi was murdered in her bedroom. She was struck with a heavy object and her throat was cut. Her body was found lying on her bed the next morning. At around 6 a.m., the housemaid arrived and rang the doorbell. Normally, Hemraj opened the door, but there was no response. Hemraj was missing and his phone was turned off. Because he was gone, the family first believed he might be responsible. Police arrived later that morning, but by then many relatives and neighbors had entered the apartment. This disturbed the crime scene and likely destroyed important evidence. Investigators found no sign of forced entry and no murder weapon. The next day, police discovered bloodstains leading to the terrace. When they broke open the locked terrace door, they found Hemraj's body. He had also been killed in the same way as Arushi. This meant both murders happened during the same time period. This discovery changed the investigation completely. Police began looking at several possibilities. Since there was no forced entry, investigators believed the killer either knew the family or was already inside the home. A whiskey bottle with bloodstains suggested the killer had time to remain in the apartment after the murders. Some investigators focused on the parents. Questions were raised about how such a violent crime could happen without them hearing anything. Others pointed to the locked doors and the cleaned crime scene, suggesting someone inside the home may have tried to hide evidence. Another theory suggested that other domestic workers or acquaintances of Hemraj may have entered the apartment that night. Several men were questioned and even subjected to lie detector and narco tests. Different stories emerged, including claims that Arushi was attacked and both victims were killed to silence witnesses. Later, investigators again focused on Arushi's parents, suggesting the crime scene had been staged and the injuries may have been caused by a surgical instrument. A golf club owned by Rajesh Talwar was said to match the injuries, though no blood or DNA was found on it. In 2013, a court found Arushi's parents guilty and sentenced them to life in prison based on circumstantial evidence. However, in 2017, the Allahabad High Court acquitted them, stating that the evidence was insufficient and the investigation had serious flaws. Today, the Arushi Talwar double murder case remains unsolved. After years of investigations, conflicting theories, and intense media attention, no one has been definitively proven responsible for the deaths of Arushi and Hemraj. On June 6, 1996, in Rolette, Texas, a small city north of Dallas, 26-year-old Darlie Routier called 911 at about 2:31 a.m. She told the operator that an intruder had broken into her home and attacked her and her two young sons. Her husband Darren and their baby Drake were asleep upstairs. Police arrived within minutes. Inside the home, they found a terrible scene. 6-year-old Devon was already dead, and 5-year-old Damon was critically injured. Damon later died on the way to the hospital. Darlie herself had cuts on her neck and arms. Darlie told police she had been sleeping downstairs with the boys while watching TV. She said she woke up when one of the boys stirred and saw a man dressed in dark clothing and a baseball cap standing over her. She claimed she chased him toward the kitchen and heard glass breaking as he escaped through the garage. On the floor, she saw a white-handled knife and realized she was covered in blood. She said she picked up the knife, then dropped it, and yelled for her husband before calling 911. During the 911 call, she mentioned touching the knife and wondered if fingerprints could have been taken from it. This statement was later used against her in court. Darlie was taken to surgery around 3:40 a.m. One wound on her neck was very close to a major artery, and doctors had to remove part of her necklace from the wound. Some reports described her injuries as serious, while others said they were minor. Police noted that a window screen in the garage had been cut. However, investigators soon began to doubt that an intruder had entered the home. A crime scene consultant claimed within minutes of arriving that there had been no break-in, and this belief strongly shaped the investigation. On June 18, 1996, Darlie was arrested and later charged with murder. Her trial began in January 1997. Prosecutors argued that she killed her sons to maintain her lifestyle and suggested she suffered from depression and emotional distress. They claimed her wounds could have been self-inflicted and that her behavior after the attack seemed unusual. Several pieces of evidence became key points in the case. A white tube sock stained with the boy's blood was found about 75 yards from the house. Prosecutors argued that Darlie planted it to support her story. The defense argued that the timeline made this nearly impossible. Another controversial moment came days after the funeral. On what would have been Devon's 7th birthday, family members held a small gathering at the gravesite. Video footage showed Darlie smiling, laughing, and spraying silly string. Additional evidence included blood in the kitchen sink area, a broken wine glass with blood beneath it, and testimony about blood patterns on Darlie's clothing. Some experts said the patterns suggested she could have been the attacker, while the defense noted her blood was mixed with her son's blood. In February 1997, Darlie was convicted of murdering Damon and sentenced to death. She has never been tried for Devon's death. She has continued to maintain her innocence and has filed many appeals over the years. The case remains controversial. Supporters argue the investigation was flawed and focused too quickly on her. Others believe the physical evidence and inconsistencies in her story point to guilt. Nearly 3 decades later, the question of what truly happened that night is still debated.